619 species in genus Berberis, Barberry. November 7th. Berberis, Berberis, the spiny beauty, defines November 7th. Berberis symbolizes protection and boldness. You stand firm in your convictions, offering strength to those who need it. Like its thorny defense, you guard what matters most. What is Barberry? The world of plants is vast and diverse, filled with wonders that never cease to amaze me. As a plant enthusiast, I'm always eager to delve deeper into the intricacies of different species, exploring their unique characteristics and the ecological roles they play. Today, I want to share my fascination with a particular genus that has captured my attention. Berberis belong to the Berberis family, more commonly known as Barberry. Berberis is a large genus of deciduous and evergreen shrubs, boasting a wide array of species that are found throughout the temperate and subtropical regions of the world. These hardy plants are known for their resilience, adaptability, and, of course, their striking beauty. From the vibrant hues of their foliage to the delicate allure of their flowers and the tartness of their berries, Berberis offers a sensory feast for any plant lover. One of the things that I find most captivating about Berberis is its sheer diversity. With over 400 species, the genus encompasses a remarkable range of forms, sizes, and colors. Some species, like Berberis thunbergi, are known for their fiery autumn foliage, transforming landscapes into a tapestry of reds, oranges, and yellows. Others, such as Berberis darwinii, enchant with their clusters of golden yellow flowers that bloom in the spring, attracting a myriad of pollinators. And then there are those like Berberis vulgaris, which bear edible berries that have been used for culinary and medicinal purposes for centuries. See full list at monsteraholic.com. Why are barberry bushes illegal? It's not so much that I've seen barberry bushes being hauled off by the gardening police, but I have heard rumblings about them being illegal in some places. Apparently, those pretty shrubs I helped Grandma with can turn into bullies in the wild. They grow super fast and crowd out all the other plants, kind of like a green takeover mission. This throws a whole wrench into the ecosystem. It's like they forget they're supposed to be part of a team, not hostile invaders. That's why I've heard some states are banning them to keep the natural world balanced. When to trim barberry bushes. I've gotten into a bit of a routine with trimming the barberry bushes in my yard. Since I like to enjoy the little yellow flowers in the spring, I hold off on any major trimming until after they've finished blooming. Usually that means sometime in late spring or early summer. It seems like after the flowers fade, the bush gets a burst of new growth, so I'll often give it a light trim then to keep it from getting too unruly. But if a branch looks dead or diseased, I won't hesitate to snip that off any time of year. Gotta keep the bush healthy, right? I've heard some folks also prune in late winter or early spring to shape the bush, but I haven't tried that myself yet. How to trim a barberry bush. Trimming my barberry bush can be a bit of a prickly situation, literally. Those thorns are no joke. I make sure to gear up with some thick gardening gloves before I get started. Since I mostly focus on keeping the bush a manageable size and shape, I use hand pruners for most of the job. For thicker branches, I might break out the loppers, but for the most part, the pruners do the trick. I typically focus on snipping off the outward-facing branches, especially any that seem to be growing wild and sprawling. I try to cut just above a bud facing inwards, so the new growth stays nice and compact within the bush's frame. If the bush looks leggy or overgrown, I might thin out some of the older, thicker branches at the base to encourage new growth lower down. The key for me is to take it slow and snip strategically. I don't want to end up looking like I gave my bush a bad haircut. Do all barberry bushes attract ticks? In my experience, it seems like the main culprit for tick havens are those Japanese barberry bushes. They're the ones with the super dense foliage. I remember reading somewhere that these bushes create a kind of humid microclimate that ticks just love. Maybe that's why whenever I see them in someone's yard, it always makes me a little nervous, especially if I know they have pets who like to romp around outside. Don't get me wrong, I haven't exactly seen droves of ticks leaping out of every barberry bush, but those Japanese ones definitely seem to be tick magnets compared to the other varieties. Are barberry evergreen? That's an interesting question. My barberry bush definitely loses its leaves in the fall. It gets this fiery red color for a bit, which is actually pretty stunning, but then by winter it's bare branches all the way. However, I remember Grandma mentioning a different kind of barberry she saw at a nursery that supposedly stayed green year-round. Maybe it depends on the variety? Next time I'm at the garden center, I'll have to ask about those evergreen ones. Having a touch of green in the winter might be nice. How far back can you trim barberry bushes? You've got some pretty tough barberry bushes there. They're surprisingly resilient. In my experience, you can actually cut them back quite a bit, depending on what you're hoping to achieve. I've seen people give their barberries a real whacking, practically down to the ground, to encourage bushier, denser growth. The bush might look a little sad for a season, but it'll usually bounce back strong with lots of new shoots. Of course, if you're just looking for a light trim to maintain shape, you can just focus on snipping off the outward growing branches. Just remember, the general rule is to avoid cutting back more than a third of the bush's growth at a time to keep it healthy. But hey, if your barberry is a real overgrown monster, don't be afraid to be bold with those pruners. Those bushes can take it. Can you prune barberry bushes in the summer? Absolutely. You can prune barberry bushes in the summer, though there are a few things to keep in mind. It's actually a great time for some light shaping and maintenance. Here's what I've found works well. Timing is key. Avoid the hottest part of the day, especially if you live in a scorching climate. Early morning or evening is ideal when the sun's not beating down as much. Focus on light trims. Major pruning is best left for late spring or early summer after flowering. In the heart of summer, focus on removing dead branches, shaping overgrown areas, or trimming back any branches that are sprawling out of control. Encourage new growth. When you make your cuts, try to snip just above a bud facing inwards. This will help the bush direct its energy towards new growth within its desired shape, keeping it nice and compact. Be mindful of new pests. Summer can mean more insects and diseases. Make sure your pruners are clean and sharp to avoid accidentally spreading anything nasty to your barberry. So, while a major overhaul might be better suited for another season, summer is a perfectly good time to keep your barberry bush looking neat and tidy. Does barberry have thorns? Absolutely. Barberry bushes are known for their thorns, well, technically spines since they come from modified shoots rather than true thorns. Those spiky little daggers are what I remember most from helping my grandma with her garden. Let's just say they provide some excellent keep-out protection. One brush against them and you'll definitely remember it. They come in handy for the bush, I guess, but they can be a pain when you're trying to trim or prune. That's why I always gear up with thick gardening gloves before I tackle my barberry bush. Is barberry deer resistant? In my experience, barberry bushes are definitely deer resistant, at least for the most part. Those prickly spines seem to do a good job of keeping those browsing beauties at bay. My neighbor's yard is a constant salad bar for deer, but they never touch my barberry bushes. I guess deer aren't big fans of a prickly lunch. Although, I have heard that if deer are desperate enough due to lack of food, they might take a nibble regardless. But overall, barberry seems to be a good option for those of us who are tired of Bambi and his friends making a buffet out of our gardens. Is barberry invasive? Here's the thing about barberry bushes, it depends on the kind. The ones I grew up with and helped Grandma tend to in her garden were probably the regular barberry variety. Those seem pretty well behaved and haven't caused any problems in my yard. But then there's the whole issue with Japanese barberry. Those things are apparently like eco-bullies. I've read articles about how they spread aggressively and crowd out native plants. Sounds nasty. So, while barberry itself might not be inherently invasive, that Japanese kind seems to be a real problem. If you're thinking about planting barberry, I'd recommend doing some research on the specific variety to make sure you're not welcoming an unwanted guest into your yard.